I sat in the back of my sister's presentation, watching her confidently explain my invention to a room full of investors. Not a single person knew she had stolen everything: the designs, the prototype, even the pitch deck I'd spent months perfecting. My name is Sarah Anderson, and I'd spent the last 3 years developing a revolutionary water purification system that could clean contaminated water using 90% less energy than current methods. My sister Victoria was about to become a billionaire from my work. It had all started 6 months ago, when I made the mistake of trusting my family. I'd always been the quiet one, the engineer who preferred her workshop to cocktail parties. Victoria was the opposite: MBA from Stanford, perfect hair, and the kind of smile that could charm venture capitalists out of their millions. "Sarah, you've been holed up in that lab forever," my mother said during one of our weekly family dinners. "At least tell us what you're working on." I hesitated. The project was nearly ready for patent filing, and I'd been bursting to share my breakthrough. Looking back, I should have kept quiet. "It's a new method of water purification," I explained, pulling out my tablet to show them the designs. "It uses a combination of electromagnetic fields and specialized filtration membranes to remove contaminants at the molecular level." Victoria leaned forward, suddenly interested. "How efficient is it?" 90% more energy efficient than current systems, and it can be scaled from household units to industrial applications. My father, who ran a successful manufacturing company, studied the diagrams with growing excitement. "This could be huge. Have you filed the patents yet?" "I'm finalizing the paperwork next week," I said. "Just running the last validation tests." Victoria's eyes had that calculating look I should have recognized. "You know, Sarah, this is exactly the kind of project my consulting firm specializes in. Why don't you let me look over your business plan?" I agreed, eager for her input. That weekend, I shared everything with her: the technical specifications, market research, cost projections, even my handwritten notes from the early development stages. "This is brilliant," she said, scrolling through my files. "But you'll need help bringing it to market. Let me make some calls." A week later, she invited me to dinner at her penthouse apartment. The view of the city skyline was spectacular, but something felt off about her enthusiasm. "I've been thinking about your invention," she said, pouring expensive wine. "You know what your problem is? You're too focused on the technical details. You need someone who understands the business side." "That's why I showed you everything," I replied. "I was hoping for your advice." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What if I told you I could guarantee this technology reaches its full potential? That I could make it a billion-dollar enterprise?" "That would be amazing," I said cautiously. "There's just one condition," she continued. "The market needs a face they can trust. Someone with business credentials, connections, proven success." I felt my stomach drop. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this would work better if I took the lead. You can stay in the lab, do the technical work, but I'll be the one presenting to investors, handling the business side." "Victoria, this is my invention. I've spent years in a basement lab," she cut me off. "Be realistic, Sarah. Who's going to invest millions based on presentations from an awkward engineer? You need me." I stood up, my wine glass shaking. "No, absolutely not. I'm filing the patents under my name." Her smile turned cold. "Are you sure about that?" 2 days later, my laptop disappeared from my lab. The external hard drive containing my backup files vanished from my apartment. Even my cloud storage had been wiped clean. Someone had used my emergency password, which I'd only ever shared with family. I was gathering what remained of my documentation when my mother called. "Family dinner tonight," she said firmly. "Your father has an exciting announcement." I walked into our parents' dining room that evening to find the table set for a celebration. Victoria sat in my usual place, wearing a designer suit and a triumphant smile. "Everyone," my father announced, beaming with pride, "your sister has done something extraordinary. Victoria, tell them your news." She stood holding up a glass of champagne. "I'm pleased to announce that Anderson Global Solutions has developed a groundbreaking water purification technology. We're filing patents this week, and I've already lined up meetings with major investors." The room erupted in congratulations. My mother wiped away tears of joy. My younger brother, Kevin, whistled in admiration. Initial projections value the technology at over $1 billion. Victoria continued. "Dad has already agreed to handle manufacturing through his company. I sat there, frozen in disbelief, as my sister claimed credit for years of my work. When I tried to speak, my father cut me off. "Now, Sarah," he said quietly, "don't make a scene. Victoria has the business expertise to make this successful. You should be grateful she's willing to take it on." Grateful? I stood up so quickly my chair toppled backward. "She stole my invention." Victoria's face hardened. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you have any proof this was your work?" That was the moment I realized how thoroughly she planned this. She'd taken everything, my files, my prototypes, my notes. Without documentation, it would be my word against hers. "Face it, little sister," she said smoothly, "you're not cut out for the business world. Let me handle this." I walked out of that dinner feeling hollow. Everything I'd worked for, everything I dreamed of achieving, had been stolen by my own sister. But what Victoria didn't know was that I hadn't been completely naive. Years of working in competitive research labs had taught me to be careful, and I had one final backup, one she couldn't possibly know about. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Dr. James Chen, my old professor from MIT, who had mentored me through the early stages of the project. "They did what?" His voice crackled with anger when I explained the situation. "I need your help, Dr. Chen. Remember those progress reports I sent you? The encrypted ones? Of course, I have them all archived with timestamps." My second call was to Patricia Martinez, a patent attorney known for handling high-profile intellectual property disputes. Her reputation for being ruthless was exactly what I needed. "Ms. Anderson," she said after hearing my story, "do you have any idea how valuable this technology is? Victoria seems to think it's worth $1 billion. More, much more. And if what you're telling me is true, your sister just committed intellectual property theft on a massive scale." I took a deep breath. "I can prove it was my invention. I just need time." "Time," Patricia said thoughtfully, "and a certain amount of theatrical timing. Tell me, when is your sister filing the patent application?" "Next week. She's making a big show of it, invited journalists, investors, even local politicians to watch her submit the paperwork." Patricia's laugh was cold. "Perfect, because I got something better than a patent application. I've got a surprise that will make your sister wish she'd never heard of intellectual property law." As I hung up the phone, I looked at the small USB drive in my hand, the one Victoria didn't know about, the one I'd kept in a safety deposit box since the beginning. It contained everything: dated design files, video logs of my testing process, and most importantly, proof that I'd already filed a provisional patent application months ago. Victoria thought she had stolen my future. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. I sat down at my computer and began typing an email to every person on Victoria's invitation list for the patent filing ceremony. They were about to witness something, all right, just not what my sister had planned. The real show was about to begin. The date of Victoria's patent filing ceremony arrived with all the fanfare she'd planned. The atrium of the patent office had been transformed into a makeshift press conference space, complete with a podium bearing the Anderson Global Solutions logo. I stood at the back of the room, watching investors and journalists file in. Victoria worked the crowd like a professional, shaking hands and flashing her practice smile. Our parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride. "Ready?" Patricia Martinez appeared beside me, carrying a sleek briefcase. I nodded, gripping my own laptop bag tightly. Inside was the USB drive containing 3 years of my life's work. "Remember," Patricia said quietly, "timing is everything. Let her start her presentation before we make our move." Victoria stepped up to the podium, looking flawless in an expensive suit. "Thank you all for coming today," she began. "We're here to witness a historic moment in environmental technology." I tuned out her speech, having heard every line during our family dinner. Instead, I watched the faces in the crowd. Investors leaned forward, already calculating their potential returns. Journalists scribbled notes about the brilliant businesswoman revolutionizing water purification. "The applications of this technology are limitless," Victoria continued. "From developing nations to industrial use, our system will transform how the world handles water contamination." Our father nodded approvingly. Our mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. And now, Victoria gestured to her assistant, who approached with a tablet. "I'll demonstrate the patent filing process." "Excuse me," Patricia's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Before you proceed, I have something relevant to share." Victoria's smile flickered. I'm sorry, this is a private event. Patricia Martinez, intellectual property attorney, she introduced herself, striding to the front. And I'm here representing the true inventor of this technology. The room erupted in murmurs. Victoria's face hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. I invented this system. Did you? Patricia connected my laptop to the room's projection system. Then perhaps you can explain these. The screen filled with my original design documents, complete with timestamps and metadata. Video clips play showing me working in my lab, testing prototypes, recording results. Or this, Patricia continued, displaying my provisional patent application, filed 3 months earlier. Notice the date and the name, Sarah Anderson. Victoria's composure cracked. These are clearly falsified. I can verify their authenticity, a new voice called out. Dr. Chen stood up from his seat in the middle row. As Ms. Anderson's former professor and mentor, I received regular encrypted progress reports throughout the development process. I maintain copies of all correspondence, which I've already provided to the patent office. The journalists who'd come to cover a simple patent filing were now furiously taking notes about a much bigger story. Investors began quietly edging toward the exits. Sarah, our father started to stand. What are you doing? Reclaiming what's mine, I said, finally walking to the front. Victoria didn't invent anything. She stole my work after I trusted her with it. That's ridiculous, Victoria snapped. Her voice shook. Where's your proof? I pulled out the USB drive. Right here. Every file, every test result, every piece of documentation you thought you'd erased. Plus something else you didn't know about. I nodded to Patricia, who displayed one final document. This is Ms. Anderson's full patent application, submitted electronically last night. The patent office has already begun processing it. Victoria lunged for the podium. You can't do this. I have investors. Contracts. Fraudulent contracts, Patricia cut in smoothly, based on stolen intellectual property. Would your investors like to hear about the potential legal ramifications? The remaining investors quickly joined those already leaving. Victoria's assistant quietly gathered her things and slipped away. Mom, Dad, Victoria turned to our parents. You know this technology is better in my hands. Sarah doesn't have the business acumen. What I have, I interrupted, is a partnership agreement with Aquatech International. They're very interested in my invention and my continued role as lead engineer in its development. That was the final blow. Victoria knew Aquatech. They were the industry leaders she'd been trying to court for weeks. You're bluffing, she whispered. The doors opened and James Wong, Aquatech's CEO, walked in. Actually, she's not. We've been watching Ms. Anderson's work for months. When she approached us last week with proof of her invention and evidence of its theft, we were very interested indeed. Victoria's face went pale. Our father slumped in his chair. Our mother was crying again, but not from pride this time. The contracts will be signed this afternoon, James continued. Sarah will head our new research division, overseeing the implementation of her technology globally. I turned to my sister. You thought I was just a quiet engineer who couldn't handle the business world. You never bothered to ask what I was actually planning. Sarah. Our father stood up. Surely we can work something out. Keep this in the family. The family that supported Victoria stealing my work? I shook my head. No, this is business now, and Victoria should understand that better than anyone. Patricia stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, your daughter Victoria is facing serious legal consequences for intellectual property theft. I suggest you all leave now, before the press asks too many uncomfortable questions. They left quickly, Victoria's perfect composure finally shattered. The journalists, however, stayed. They had a much better story than they'd expected. 1 year later, I stood on a stage in Kenya, watching as the first large-scale implementation of my water purification system came online. Villages that had struggled with contaminated water for generations now had access to clean, safe drinking water. Victoria had avoided criminal charges by signing a comprehensive admission of theft and agreeing never to work in environmental technology. Last I heard, she'd moved to another state, away from the scandal. Our parents tried to apologize, claiming they'd had no idea how far Victoria would go. I maintain a polite but distant relationship with them, focused mainly on holiday cards and occasional phone calls. The real celebration happened in my lab at Aquatech's research center. Dr. Chen was there, along with my team of engineers. We toasted with champagne from paper cups, surrounded by prototypes and testing equipment. Your sister never understood, Dr. Chen said quietly, that true innovation isn't about who can pitch the best story. It's about who's willing to do the work. He was right. Victoria had seen only the potential profits, not the years of research, the failed attempts, the endless refinements that went into creating something revolutionary. Last week, I received an envelope from the patent office, my second patent, for an improved version of the system. As I hung it on my office wall next to the first one, I thought about how differently things might have gone if I hadn't kept that backup, if I hadn't been prepared for betrayal. But then I realized something. Victoria's theft, painful as it was, had forced me to fight for my invention in a way I might not have otherwise. Instead of letting my sister handle the business side, I learned to navigate that world myself. Instead of staying quietly in my lab, I found my voice. The quiet engineer had learned to roar. My invention now provides clean water to millions of people worldwide. Victoria's name appears only in old news articles about the attempted theft, a cautionary tale about corporate espionage and family betrayal. Sometimes karma works perfectly on its own. Sometimes it just needs a little help from a prepared mind, a hidden USB drive, and the determination to stand up for what's right. As for me, I still prefer my lab to boardrooms, but I've learned to move comfortably in both worlds. My team knows me as both the brilliant engineer and the fierce protector of our innovations. And that USB drive, I had it framed. It sits on my desk as a reminder that the quietest person in the room might just be the most dangerous, especially when they're protecting something they've built with their own hands and mind. The next generation of my water purification system is already in development. This time, I didn't tell my family anything about it. Some lessons you only need to learn once. They say time heals all wounds, but some cuts run too deep to ever fully heal. I'm Emily, and 3 years ago I lost my only child, my beautiful boy Lucas, to leukemia. He was only 12. The kind of loss that reshapes your whole world, leaving you to navigate a reality you never wanted to face. I remember the day we got the diagnosis like it was yesterday. Lucas had been tired, more than usual for an active 12-year-old. Bruises appeared on his legs that he couldn't explain. When the doctor said the word leukemia, my world stopped spinning. The next 8 months were a blur of hospital rooms, chemotherapy sessions, and desperate prayers. Through it all, Lucas remained our ray of sunshine. "Mom," he'd say during the long nights in the hospital, "when I get better, can we go to Disney World? I want to ride Space Mountain." I'd smile and add it to our growing list of future plans, trying to hide my tears as I watched my once energetic boy grow weaker each day. The college fund had been Lucas's idea, actually. He was always thinking ahead, even at 12. "I want to be a doctor, Mom," he told me one day during treatment, his face serious despite the cartoon-covered hospital gown he wore. "So I can help other kids like me." That night, I opened the college savings account, determined to make his dream come true. I put every spare penny into that account. My job as a high school teacher didn't pay much, but I managed to save $47,000 over the years. It was my way of holding on to hope, of believing in a future where Lucas would grow up to wear a white coat and save lives. But life had other plans. Lucas passed away on a quiet Sunday morning in April. One moment he was there, holding my hand, telling me not to cry, and the next, he was gone. The world kept turning somehow, even though my reason for existing had slipped away. That's when my younger brother Michael stepped in. He'd always been the successful one in the family, investment banker, living in the city, the one who had it all figured out. When he offered to manage Lucas's college fund, to make it grow through his investment expertise, I agreed. Maybe it was grief clouding my judgment, or maybe I just needed something to believe in again. "Trust me, Em," he said, his confident smile so reminiscent of our childhood days when he convinced me to go along with his schemes. "I'll make sure Lucas's money helps other kids achieve their dreams. We'll set up a scholarship in his name." I signed the papers, transferring control of the account to Michael. Our parents praised his generosity, calling him a guardian angel for stepping in to help their grieving daughter. Even then, something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. After all, he was family. For the next 2 years, I threw myself into teaching, trying to fill the Lucas-shaped hole in my heart by helping other children reach their potential. Michael would send me quarterly statements showing how the investment was growing, complete with complicated charts and financial jargon I barely understood. I wanted to believe everything was fine. Then came the wedding invitation. Michael was marrying Sophia, his girlfriend of 6 months. The envelope was thick, cream-colored paper with gold embossing. Clearly expensive. Inside was an invitation to what promised to be the society event of the year. Ceremony at the Grand Plaza Hotel, followed by a reception for 300 guests, with a 5-course dinner and live entertainment. Isn't it exciting? My mother gushed over the phone. Michael says they're flying in orchids from Thailand for the centerpieces. And wait until you see Sophia's dress. It costs more than my first car. Something about the extravagance made my stomach turn. Michael had always lived well, but this seemed over the top even for him. Still, I pushed my concerns aside and focused on being happy for my brother. After all, he'd been there for me during my darkest days. The wedding was exactly as advertised, a showcase of wealth and excess. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, champagne flowed freely, and the orchid centerpieces were works of art. I sat at my assigned table, feeling out of place in my department store dress, watching Michael and Sophia twirl across the dance floor. "You should be proud," the woman next to me said, introducing herself as one of Sophia's aunts. "Your brother certainly knows how to throw a party. Though I hear they went a bit over budget. Something about unexpected investment losses." My blood ran cold. Investment losses? The woman nodded, warming to her gossip. "Oh yes, apparently some of his clients' accounts took quite a hit. But Michael wasn't about to let that stop him from giving Sophia her dream wedding. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice, moved some money around. You know how these financial types are, always robbing Peter to pay Paul." I excused myself and headed for the bathroom, my head spinning. Surely she was mistaken. Michael he couldn't have. But as I thought back over the past few months, the increasingly complex statements, the delayed responses to my questions about the scholarship program, his sudden lavish wedding, pieces started falling into place. That night, I couldn't sleep. As soon as I got home, I dug out all the statements Michael had sent me and really looked at them for the first time. The numbers didn't add up. The charts seemed to be copied from different sources. How had I been so blind? The next morning, I called the bank where the original college fund had been held. After providing my documentation, the customer service representative confirmed my worst fears. The account had been empty 8 months ago. Every penny of Lucas's college fund, gone. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the bank statements, feeling like I couldn't breathe. The money wasn't just savings. It was Lucas's legacy, his dream of helping other children transform into Thai orchids and champagne fountains. When I confronted Michael over the phone, his response chilled me to the bone. "It was just sitting there, Emily," he said, his voice carrying that same confident tone he'd always used to talk his way out of trouble. "The money wasn't doing anyone any good. Lucas is gone. He doesn't need it anymore. I had expenses, the wedding. I'll pay you back eventually." I hung up without saying another word. That night, I started gathering evidence, bank statements, transfer records, copies of the original agreement where Michael promised to manage the fund for scholarship purposes. I documented everything, building a case while trying to contain the rage and betrayal threatening to consume me. 2 weeks after the wedding, Michael called again. This time, his voice had lost its usual swagger. I need your help," he said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the desperation underneath. "Sophia and I found the perfect house. But with the wedding expenses and some investment complications, we're a little short on the down payment." I was hoping. I cut him off. "How much did the orchids cost, Michael?" "What?" "The orchids. At your wedding. The ones from Thailand. How much did they cost?" "I don't see what that has to do with." "They were beautiful," I continued, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I bet they cost about as much as a semester of college. The champagne fountain probably covered another semester. The ice sculptures. Maybe those could have funded a year of medical school." "Emily, you're not still upset about the college fund, are you?" "I told you, I'll pay it back." "I have copies of everything," I said quietly. "Every transfer, every fake statement, every document you forged. I've spent the past 2 weeks building a case that would make any prosecutor very, very interested." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. You wouldn't, he finally whispered. I'm your brother. And Lucas was my son. I let those words hang in the air between us, heavy with all they implied. Then I told him exactly what I planned to do next. The family meeting was set for Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I arrived early, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm, my heart pounding against my ribs. Mom was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared her famous pot roast. The same meal she'd made the night Michael convinced me to sign over Lucas's college fund. Emily, sweetie. She turned from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron. You're early. Michael and Sophia should be here soon. They have such exciting news about a house they're looking at. I set my folder on the dining room table. Yes, Mom. I know all about the house. Something in my tone made her pause, the smile faltering on her face. Before she could question me further, the front door opened. Dad walked in, followed by Michael and Sophia. My brother's usual confidence seemed dimmed, his shoulders tense. Sophia floated in wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary, still radiating that newly glow. Emily. Sophia air-kissed my cheek. You'll never believe it. We found the most amazing house in Riverside Heights. 5 bedrooms, pool, everything we've dreamed of. Michael says you might be able to help us with the down payment. I smiled tightly. Actually, I have something to show everyone. Why don't we sit down? Mom brought the pot roast to the table, and we took our usual seats. The familiar scene felt surreal. How many Sunday dinners had we shared here, while Michael sat on his secrets, spending my dead son's money? Before we eat, I said, opening my folder, I'd like to talk about Lucas's college fund. The change in the room was instant. Michael's face went pale, Sophia looked confused, and my parents exchanged glances. Emily, Michael started, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I pulled out the first document, the original agreement Michael had signed. 2 years ago, after Lucas died, Michael offered to manage his college fund. He promised to turn it into a scholarship program to help other children. Instead, one by one, I laid out the evidence. Bank statements showing the complete withdrawal of funds. Copies of the fake quarterly reports Michael had sent me. Documentation of transfers to wedding vendors, the florist, the caterer, the venue. $47,000, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Every penny I saved for Lucas's future, gone. Spent on orchids and ice sculptures and champagne fountains. Michael? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Tell me this isn't true. My brother's face had gone from pale to ashen. Sophia sat frozen, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the table. I was going to pay it back, he stammered. The market took a downturn. I had some losses, the wedding expenses. The wedding expenses, I cut in. You mean your 300-person extravaganza? The one with flowers flown in from Thailand? That's what you spent my dead son's college fund on? Emily, Dad's voice held a warning note. He's your brother. We can work this out as a family. Work what out? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How he stole from his dead nephew. How he took money meant to help sick children and spent it on a party. I didn't steal it. Michael's voice rose. You signed it over to me. I had every legal right. Legal right? The words exploded from me. Lucas trusted you. I trusted you. He wanted that money to help other kids like him, children fighting for their lives in hospital beds while you. Sophia suddenly stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't know, she said, her voice shaking. Michael told me the wedding was paid for with his bonus. He said. She turned to my brother, tears in her eyes. What else have you lied about? Sophia, baby, please. Michael reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The house down payment, she continued, realization dawning on her face. That's why you wanted to ask Emily for help, because you've already spent. I can explain everything, Michael pleaded, but Sophia was already grabbing her purse, heading for the door. The sound of it slamming behind her echoed through the suddenly silent house. Mom was crying quietly. Dad's face had aged 10 years, and Michael sat slumped in his chair, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. I've spoken to a lawyer, I said, gathering my documents back into the folder. He says we have enough evidence for both civil and criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, misappropriation of funds. You can't be serious, Dad interrupted. He's family. Family? I stood up, my chair scraping back. Lucas was family too. your grandson. But I don't remember you being this concerned when he was dying. When was the last time you visited his grave? Do you even remember what he looked like?" The silence that followed was deafening. My parents couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm giving you a choice, Michael," I continued. "Pay back every penny of Lucas's money, with interest, or I'm going to the police. You have 48 hours to decide." I walked out of my parents' house that night and never looked back. Michael scraped together the money somehow, probably by selling his fancy car and borrowing from whatever friends he had left. The payment arrived by certified check exactly 47 hours later. I used the money to establish the Lucas Thompson Memorial Scholarship Fund, properly this time through a legitimate charitable foundation. Every year, it helps cover medical school costs for students who want to specialize in pediatric oncology. The first recipient was a young woman whose brother had died of leukemia. When she told me she wanted to help ensure no other family went through what hers did, I heard Lucas's voice in her words. My parents still try to reach out occasionally. They send cards on holidays, leave voicemails about healing the family. I delete them without listening. Some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. Last week, I received an invitation to a fundraising gala for the children's hospital where Lucas was treated. As I walked through the hospital halls, memories flooded back, both painful and precious. But this time, they didn't overwhelm me. In the pediatric oncology wing, there's a new play area for the young patients. A plaque on the wall reads, "The Lucas Thompson Memorial Playroom." It's bright and cheerful, filled with toys and games and books. In one corner, a boy about Lucas's age was reading a medical textbook, his IV pole beside him. "I'm going to be a doctor," he told me proudly when he saw me looking. "I want to help other kids like me." I smiled through my tears, thinking of another boy who'd said those same words. Lucas's money might have been stolen, but his dream lived on. Sometimes that's all we can ask for, that the love we put into the world finds its way back somehow, that our losses become someone else's beginning. Michael and Sophia divorced 6 months after that Sunday dinner. I heard through mutual friends that he lost his job when word got out about what he'd done. Last I knew, he was living in a small apartment, working at a local bank, a far cry from his investment banker days. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about Lucas, if he feels any remorse for what he did. But mostly, I've learned to let go of those questions. The scholarship fund has helped 12 students so far. Each spring, I receive letters from them, telling me about their studies, their hopes, their plans to make a difference. I keep these letters in a special box alongside Lucas's photos. When I read them, I can almost hear him saying, "See, Mom, dreams really do come true, just not always the way we expect." He would have been 15 this year. Sometimes I imagine him as he might have been, taller, voice deeper, but still with that gentle heart that made him want to help others. In my darkest moments when the loss feels fresh and raw, I remember what he taught me about love and forgiveness. But some things are beyond forgiveness. What Michael did wasn't just a betrayal of me. It was a betrayal of Lucas's memory, of his dream to help other children. That's a debt that can't be repaid with money alone. Yesterday, I visited Lucas's grave. I do this every Sunday, bringing fresh flowers and telling him about my week. This time, I told him about the scholarship recipients, about the new playroom, about all the ways his spirit lives on in the lives he's helping to shape. "You did it, baby," I whispered, touching the cool stone. "You're helping other kids just like you wanted, and Mom's making sure no one can ever take that away again." As I walked back to my car, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lucas loved sunsets. He used to say they were proof that endings could be beautiful. Standing there in the fading light, I finally understood what he meant. Some endings are painful, cutting us off from people we once thought we'd never live without. But sometimes those endings make space for new beginnings, for different kinds of family, not bound by blood, but by something stronger, the choice to honor what matters most. Lucas taught me that, and in the end, that lesson was worth more than any amount of money Michael could have stolen.